This is Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque, continuing 16 years on air and online, helping you succeed in buying, selling, and investing in property. The best real estate strategies out there just for you.
Welcome to Real Estate This Week. Hi again, I'm Stephen Gasque, and I'm delighted you're here as we examine the big push for more homes. Massive campaigns to open more doors to more buyers. But this push is different because it's all about getting rid of old laws, rules, and regulations that created barriers to homeownership and replacing them with new, cutting-edge approaches that will help bring more homes to America and help end what's been called the housing crisis. It was put on the record recently when one of the nation's top real estate professionals testified before Congress about the housing crisis and how to fix it. And that real estate pro is with us right now. Joining us is Kevin Sears, broker associate at Sears Real Estate, Lamacchia Realty in Springfield, Massachusetts, and the past president of the National Association of Realtors. Kevin is also the past president of the Massachusetts Realtors. Kevin, welcome to Real Estate This Week.
Thanks, Steve. Happy to be with you.
I am so glad you're with us. Now, Kevin, I understand that recently you testified before Congress about what's being described as America's housing crisis. Now tell us, what's the solution here? How are we going to get back to a normal real estate market and out of the crisis mode?
Yeah, so let me set the stage for your listeners, Steve. This is a situation that's been developing for decades. It didn't just happen overnight. Since the Great Recession in 2008, we have underbuilt by anywhere from 3.8 to 5.3 million housing units, depending on who you talk to. So at the National Association of Realtors, we're saying it's 4.8 to 5 million units. In that, and then let's go back to the mid-'90s. Since the mid-'90s, our population here in the United States has grown by tens of millions of people. And so when you underbuild for a decade and a half and the population surges, well, all of a sudden you're going to have, a housing shortage that is exacerbated by sometimes bad policies, sometimes a NIMBYism, which is not in my backyard, and sometimes it's just some local zoning officials who just don't want to see growth and construction in their communities. And so what I talked to the House Financial Services Committee about was multiple things. What can we do to streamline the building process? Across the country, on average, on a new construction, red tape costs $100,000 per unit before a shovel gets in the ground.
Wow.
Yes. And so let's just think about if we could expedite the permitting process, then maybe the red tape would cut in half, and that's $50,000, making things more affordable for the buying consumer. But here's another thing. The capital gains exclusion of $250,000 for a single person and $500,000 for a married couple, and that's a capital gains exemption on their primary residence. Those numbers were set in 1997. In 1997, those numbers were set. They have not been adjusted since. They were not indexed for inflation. And we all know what's happened in the housing market in the last 5 years, let alone the last 28 years. And so, Steve, when I was before the House Financial Services Committee, I talked about this. I bought my first home in Springfield, Massachusetts in 1996 for $83,000. My 25-year-old son sent me a text a week and a half ago about a home. He's a first-time home buyer, a home that he wants to look at, $850,000.
Wow.
Yes, in less than 30 years, when a first-time home buyer is looking at something, and I can only compare mine to my son's 10 times as much, that is unfeasible. And so what we need to do is we need to put in smarter building practices, more streamlined process. And then with the capital gains exemption, if we could get Congress to pass the More Homes on the Market Act, that would double the exclusion up to 500,000 and $1 million of tax-free, making it tax-free on the sale. And just think about all of the baby boomers out there that are sitting on their primary residence, but are hesitant to sell because of the tax bill, the tax liability that would come due, that would be triggered by the sale. And so if we can increase that exclusion, I think that we'd be able to free up some inventory immediately with the baby boomer a segment of our population who likely would either downsize or might have a second home that they would move into full time. So there are different things, different levers that can be pulled. There is no silver bullet. But the one thing we can't do anymore is drag our feet. These things do need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed sooner than later.
Well, Kevin, the capital gains exclusion changes that you just described are part of, as you said, the More Homes on the Market Act. And that's one of several pieces of legislation that are out there to help ease the crisis. Tell us about some of the others, including the Housing Supply Frameworks Act.
Yeah, as you said, in last year's congressional session, we talked about many different pieces of legislation with Congress. The one you just talked about, there was one, the YIMBY Act, Yes in My Backyard. We discussed the possibility for tax incentives for small landlords, mom and pop housing providers to sell maybe one of their rental units that they have to a first-time home buyer, and they get a tax credit. We've been talking about all different sorts of potential tax incentives for converting commercial space into residential use. So there's a lot of different options, and we're hoping that some of them will make their way through. And one of the other things that I talked with the House Financial Services Committee about was a playbook that the National Association of Realtors has collaborated with the mayors across the country and the APA, and it gives nearly 4 dozen examples of it's a housing accelerator playbook of how different local communities have successfully been able to change their zoning to build more, not only affordable housing, but housing in general. And the more housing we can build of any kind, the better off we will be. And so, these are real life examples that state and local communities can use in order to accelerate housing growth.
Kevin, I also heard you testify about people's net worth, homeowners compared to renters. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The most recent study that the National Association of Realtors has done shows that the average or typical American renter has a net worth of about $10,000, whereas the typical U.S. homeowner has a net worth of $430,000. And so that's a 43 times difference. I mean, what we're talking about is intergenerational wealth. We're talking about the ability for people to be able to retire with a little nest egg or send their kids to college. And, the typical renter just doesn't have that same opportunity. And, I've never heard anybody say, when I grow up, I want to rent that 450 square foot flat over there. No, it's the white picket fence. It's the shutters on the house, and it's the yard for them to socialize in or the kids to play in. And, so that's why it's so important for us to make sure that the American dream of home ownership stays alive and well.
And one other very controversial proposal, Kevin, the 50-year mortgage. Now, that's just a plan so far. It's not available. But what do you think? It would get people into a home more easily, but the long-term costs could be huge.
All you would be doing is extending out someone's payment by another 20 years. I mean, they would be just paying so much more. They might be able to get into a house. And obviously, we want to do what we can to get people in a house. But in my last answer, I talked about intergenerational wealth. I don't want to pass on to my kids or my grandkids intergenerational debt. And when you're talking about a 50-year mortgage, did you know, Steve, that the average age or the median age of a U.S. First-time home buyer has risen to 40 years old?
Oh, my God.
So think about this. A 40-year-old gets a 50-year mortgage. I mean, so that we just have to talk about it, be realistic and eyes wide open when we talk about it. Is it another arrow in the quiver? Sure. Is it something that is going to solve the problem? Absolutely not.
I see. Well, Kevin, as we enter 2026, this brand new year, I certainly hope that some of the proposals you're talking about happen and make a big difference in helping people get into homes all across America. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, Steve, I appreciate the opportunity. And I love the way that you're closing that out, because what we were talking about is not a red issue. It's not a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. It's an American issue. And I sure hope our elected officials can come to some agreement, a bipartisan agreement, and help solve this pressing issue.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kevin. Kevin Sears, broker associate at Sears Real Estate, Lamachia Realty in Springfield, Massachusetts, and the past president of the National Association of Realtors, and the past president of the Massachusetts Realtors. Next time on Real Estate This Week, saving money on heat. Is your area in a deep freeze? If so, this is the show for you. Expert advice on how to stay warm without breaking the bank. That's next on Real Estate This Week. And until then, I'm Stephen Gasque, and thank you for listening.
A brand new episode of Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque drops every Thursday, everywhere. And you're invited to listen, subscribe, and follow us. Just look for Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque. The best real estate strategies out there, just for you.